and gentlemen, you know I used to think that being unbothered was some kind of magic trick, that there were just some women walking around this earth with halos on their heads, brushing off every insult, every betrayal, every side eye, every ghosted text, like they were made of something different than me. And I would look in the mirror, tears tracing down my face, fist clenched, heart broken, and I would say, God, what's wrong with me? Why does this hurt me so much when it don't seem to touch them at all? But I learned something. I learned that what we often call peace isn't peace at all. It's numbness. It's shutdown. It's silence soaked in resentment. It's swallowing poison and calling it patient. And that ain't freedom, baby. That's bondage in a pretty dress. So when I talk to you today about the secret to never getting angry or bothered by anyone, I'm not talking about being numb. I'm not talking about being so cold, so detached, so guarded that nothing gets in, not even the love you crave. I'm talking about a sacred kind of freedom, the kind that stands in the middle of chaos and says, I still know who I am. The kind that hears the lie but doesn't internalize it. The kind that can feel the sting but not build a home in it. The kind that walks through fire and comes out with no smoke on your skin. Let me tell you a story. I remember this time I was walking through something that felt like rejection dressed in betrayal. You know the type. When someone you let in real close, someone you love without pretense, someone you prayed for and clapped for and cried for, turns around and uses your vulnerability like a weapon. And there I was sitting on the bathroom floor asking God, why does this hurt so bad? Why am I so mad? Why can't I just let this go? And in that still small whisper that only He knows how to speak, I heard, because your anger is a response to an identity crisis. Ooh, you see, anger ain't the enemy, it's the alarm. It's the signal. It's the evidence that something in you is unhealed, something in you is unsure. We get angry when we feel disrespected because somewhere we still doubt our own worth. We get bothered when they don't see us because somewhere we still believe we're invisible unless we prove ourselves. But freedom doesn't flinch when it's overlooked. It doesn't shrink when misunderstood. It doesn't break when falsely accused, because freedom knows that who I am is not up for debate. The secret to never getting angry or bothered by anyone, it ain't in pretending, it ain't in performing, it's in returning to your true self, returning to the God that made you, returning to the truth that your value isn't given by people and it can't be taken by people. And to returning to that their opinions, their shade, their silence, their leaving, it can't rewrite the name God etched into your soul. You gotta stop letting wounded people write your identity. Stop letting broken voices narrate your worth. They don't know what it took for you to stand here. They don't know the nights you cried yourself to sleep and still showed up in the morning. They don't know how many times you laid on that altar and said, God, take what's not like you. They don't know, but He does. And if He calls you whole, why would you answer to broken? I need somebody in this room, somebody reading this right now, to make a decision, a holy decision, a heaven-backed decision, that from this moment forward, you will no longer hand people the power to shake your peace. Not because you're trying to act tough, but because you've been through too much. You've healed too deeply. You've grown too far to let petty people pull you back to a version of you that no longer fits. I had to learn that boundaries are holy. Let me say it again for the woman in the back who's been giving everybody access and wondering why she's always exhausted. Boundaries are holy. And baby, peace is expensive. It costs you your approval addiction. It costs you your people pleasing. It costs you your need to clap back, to always have the last word. But let me tell you, it's worth every ounce. Because when you're truly free, you don't need closure. You don't need apology. You don't need them to validate what you already know God confirmed. You can smile, bless them, and keep walking. Now, I'm not saying it won't hurt. Growth hurts. Letting go of who you were so you can embrace who you're becoming, that's labor. But don't you dare mistake the pain of growth for the pain of being stuck. One leads to resurrection, the other is just slow death. You ever been around someone who just radiates peace? Not because they haven't been through anything, but because they've been through everything and chose not to let it make them bitter? That's what I'm talking about. I want that for you. I want that for the girl who cries in the shower because she doesn't want to burden anybody with her truth. I want that for the woman who keeps shrinking herself to fit in rooms God called her to lead. I want that for the one who's so used to surviving she forgot what it feels like to thrive. I want you to know that you don't have to stay stuck in anger. It's not your identity. It's not your inheritance. You were made for joy. You were made for love. You were made for peace that passes understanding. I used to believe that anger was just a natural part of life, something that came with being human, being passionate, being real. And yes, emotions are real. Emotions are valid. But there comes a time when you realize that not everything you feel should be the captain of your ship. There comes a time when you sit in the aftermath of your reaction, your words, your silence, your withdrawal, your outbursts, and you start asking yourself, what am I really mad about? That question right there, that's the door to a deeper truth. See, what most people never talk about is that anger is rarely about the moment. It's rarely about the thing that just happened. It's almost always layered, complex, historic. It's about the accumulation of moments. Moments where you didn't feel heard, didn't feel seen, didn't feel safe. It's about wounds that never got named, beliefs that were planted when you were too young to even understand them. And over time, that pain starts speaking in the only language it knows. Defensiveness, frustration, shutting down, lashing out. Anger is a signal. It's your heart sounding the alarm that something underneath the surface has been triggered. It's your heart. And I know we're used to treating anger like a villain, but sometimes it's the most honest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the only thing loud enough to break through your numbness. It says, pay attention to me. Something's off. Something hurts. Something needs to be addressed. But where we go wrong is when we let that alarm become our anthem. When we let the fire become our identity. When we don't dig past the surface to find the wound it's pointing to. I had to learn that my anger didn't make me bad. It made me human. But when I let it drive my decisions, my relationships, my view of the world, it made me small. It made me reactive. It kept me in cycles where I'd replay the same arguments with different faces, the same disappointments in new disguises, and that's because I was trying to treat the symptom instead of healing the source. The truth is, I wasn't angry because they disrespected me. I was angry because I believed I needed their respect to feel valuable. I wasn't angry because they left me. I was angry because somewhere deep inside, I believed I wasn't worth staying for. And every time someone confirmed that lie with their behavior, it cracked something in me all over again. And I kept saying they made me mad. No, baby, they activated something that was already broken. That's the difference. When you realize that, you stop chasing apologies like they're going to fix you. You stop expecting people to validate your experience before you heal from it. You stop needing everyone to understand you before you stand tall in your truth. Because now, you're no longer trying to fix the world around you to feel better. You're finally letting God fix the world within you. That's where the real work happens. And let me tell you, it's not easy. It takes courage to admit that your anger is coming from a place of insecurity. It takes strength to look at yourself and say, the reason I'm bothered isn't because of what they said, it's because I believed it. You've got to go back and find the places where you started doubting your worth. The moments where someone told you were too much or not enough and you believed them. You've got to pull those roots out even when it hurts, because until you do, your anger will keep leading you in circles. You can be angry and still be in love with someone. You can be angry and still be successful. You can be angry and still serve in ministry, lead a business, raise a family. But if you don't understand your anger, it will start to define how you show up in those spaces. You'll be reactive instead of reflective, defensive instead of discerning, controlling instead of confident, and eventually the people around you will stop listening, not because your feelings aren't valid, but because they can't find the why behind your what. I know what it's like to feel like you're always on the edge, like one wrong word will set you off. Like, you have to be on guard because the world hasn't been safe. And if that's you, I want you to know you don't have to stay there. That hypervigilance is not your home. That edge you're walking isn't peace, it's survival. And you deserve more than just surviving. You deserve healing, you deserve rest. But you can't get that until you stop treating your anger like the main character and start listening to what it's really trying to tell you. For me, it was telling me I didn't feel worthy, that I still carried shame from past decisions, that I hadn't forgiven myself, that I was still trying to prove something to people who had already forgotten about me. And when I brought that to God, not just the anger, but the wound underneath it, something started to shift. I started to become less reactive, not because people got nicer, but because I got clearer. I knew who I was. I knew where my worth came from. And suddenly, not every insult needed a response. Not every shade needed a spotlight. Not every rejection needed a breakdown. You start to become someone who can feel anger without becoming it. You can look at it and say, thank you for showing me where I still need healing, but you don't build a home in it. You don't let it burn bridges or block blessings. You let it be what it was always meant to be, a messenger, a mirror, a moment that points you back to your power. Because the truth is, people will always give you opportunities to be offended, to be angry, to be bothered, but your reaction isn't a reflection of them, it's a reflection of what's still alive in you. And when peace lives in you deeply enough, it becomes your default. Not anger, not bitterness, not insecurity, just peace. Not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. There's a difference between peace that's performed and peace that's possessed. Performed peace is quiet on the outside but raging on the inside. It looks like smiling when you're really breaking, saying I'm fine when you're anything but. It's keeping your tone calm while your soul is screaming for acknowledgement, for validation, for control. It's the kind of peace that says, if I can just get them to stop acting like this, if I can just fix that situation, if I can just be understood, respected, chosen, then I'll finally be okay. But that's not peace. That's a trap. That's bondage disguised as calm. Because the moment anything shifts, the moment someone doesn't respond the way you hope, the moment they ignore your boundaries, the moment things don't go the way you carefully planned, you're back to that place. Bothered, shaken, defensive, angry, anxious. You start spiraling, wondering what you did wrong, what you need to fix, how you need to show up differently to avoid discomfort. That's not peace. That's a performance rooted in fear. Real peace doesn't come from controlling your surroundings. It comes from knowing your identity. When you're anchored in who you are. When your identity is settled and sealed, you stop needing people to act a certain way for you to be okay. You stop assigning your emotional security to other people's behavior. You stop giving strangers and friends and even loved ones the kind of power that was only ever meant for God. Because here's the thing, if they gave you peace, they can take it away. But if your peace is built on truth, on who God says you are, then it's untouchable. I had to learn that the hard way. There was a time when I walked on eggshells in relationships thinking if I could just keep everything good, then I'd finally have peace. I thought peace meant not upsetting anyone, being agreeable, being nice, being needed. I thought peace meant staying quiet when something hurt me just to keep the connection. But inside I was crumbling because every time I denied myself to preserve the peace, I was losing myself a little more, and that's not peace, that's self-abandonment. It wasn't until I started standing in the truth of who I was that I found a different kind of peace. A peace that didn't come from circumstances being smooth, but from my soul being grounded. A peace that didn't come from people being predictable, but from knowing my value, whether they affirmed it or not. I realized that if my identity wasn't rooted in anything outside of me, if it wasn't tied to someone's approval or someone staying or someone clapping, then nothing could take it away. That's where peace lives. In the knowing that you are not what they called you, knowing that your worth wasn't canceled by your past, knowing that you're still loved even when you mess up, knowing that rejection isn't always personal, it's often redirection. Knowing that you don't have to beg for what's already yours. When you know who you are, you stop reacting to every opinion, every look, every text that never came, every conversation that went sideways. You stop trying to force clarity from people who thrive in confusion. You stop shrinking just to make others comfortable. You stop needing to prove you're enough because you already know, and when you know, you can rest. Not because it's all perfect, but because you are finally secure. That's the kind of peace that passes understanding because it doesn't make sense in the natural. It doesn't make sense to be unshaken when the job falls through. It doesn't make sense to keep your joy when the relationship ends. It doesn't make sense to still be soft when life's been hard. But that's what identity-based peace does. It keeps you. It carries you. It shields you from internalizing every external storm. And here's the beautiful part. When you operate from that place, you no longer need to control everything. You don't have to micromanage people's perceptions, and you don't have to defend yourself every time someone misunderstands you. You don't have to prove you're worthy of love because you know that love is your birthright. That peace makes you powerful, not because you're in control, but because you're no longer controlled. People will still try you. Life will still test you. Disappointments will still come, but they won't find you shaken. They won't find you bending to fit in places you've outgrown. They won't find you begging for scraps of affirmation because you've already feasted at the table of truth. You've already heard God say, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And when that truth becomes your foundation, you won't trade your peace for anyone's approval. There's a boldness that comes when peace is internal. It lets you walk away without bitterness. It lets you forgive without an apology. It lets you show up without needing applause. You become unshakable not because you stopped feeling, but because you stopped attaching your feelings to unstable things. You become wise enough to bless people from a distance, brave enough to say no without guilt, free enough to stop performing. I remember the first time I said, I don't need to be understood to be at peace. That changed everything for me because I had spent so much time explaining myself, trying to soften the truth so it wouldn't offend, trying to articulate my decisions just right so people wouldn't leave or talk or twist it. But when I finally realized that my peace doesn't come from being understood, it comes from being aligned, I got free. I stopped explaining and started living. I stopped managing people's emotions and started managing my own healing. And the more I did that, the quieter the world around me got. Not because there was less noise, but because I was no longer tuned in to every criticism, every assumption, every stray opinion. When you shift from control to identity, you start protecting your peace like the treasure it is. You don't give it out recklessly. You don't hand it to people who only come around to disturb it. You guard it, not with walls, but with wisdom, not with fear, but with discernment. And you realize that what used to shake you no longer has that power, not because it changed, but because you did. And that's the kind of peace that sustains you, that carries you through storm and silence, celebration and sorrow, that whispers you are still okay even when everything around you says you shouldn't be. That's the peace that's rooted not in what you have, but in who you are. And no one, not your past, not your critics, not your mistakes, can take that away. There comes a point in your journey where you realize that not everyone is supposed to go where you're going. Not everyone can have the same level of access to you. Not everyone should be able to reach you the same way they once did. It's not about pride. It's not about being better than anyone. It's about recognizing that your peace is sacred, and if you don't protect it, the wrong voices will drag you back into places you fought so hard to heal from. That's why boundaries aren't just a suggestion, they're a spiritual necessity. See, I used to think that love meant access, that being a good friend meant being available all the time, that being kind meant saying yes even when I was drowning, that being loyal meant tolerating behavior that was slowly stealing pieces of me. I thought the godlier I was, the more I should be able to endure, the more patient I should be, the more silent I should stay. But let me tell you, there's a thin line between carrying someone in love and letting them crush you out of guilt. I had to learn that being accessible to everyone was draining the very energy I needed to show up for myself, my purpose, and the people God actually assigned to my life. Boundaries are not rejection. Boundaries are clarity. Boundaries are the way you say, this is how far chaos can go. This is where dysfunction ends and my dignity begins. When you don't set boundaries, people will treat you according to their needs, not your worth. And it's not always malicious. Sometimes they're not even aware. But if you're not careful, you'll keep giving pieces of yourself to people who were never meant to hold you. You'll keep watering relationships that only bloom when you're the one bleeding. I had to learn that I was not a villain for needing space, that I wasn't wrong for saying, I can't do this right now, that no is a complete sentence, and it doesn't require a paragraph of explanation to make it valid. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to put distance between you and what constantly drains your spirit. That's not petty. That's wise, because here's the thing. If you don't set the boundary, you'll start resenting the people you say you love. You'll start holding bitterness in your heart toward people who simply responded to what you allowed. You'll become the angry one, the irritable one, the exhausted one, not because you're heartless, but because your heart has been overextended. And that resentment, that fatigue, that sense of being unappreciated, it's not their fault. It's the cost of not speaking up. It's the result of not choosing yourself when you should have. One of the most life-changing things I ever did was give myself permission to stop managing other people's feelings at the expense of my own well-being. I realized I was not created to be everyone's savior. That's God's job. I was not created to be a sponge for everyone's drama, everyone's crisis, everyone's dysfunction. My purpose is too precious to be constantly distracted by emotional fires I didn't start. And once I started enforcing those boundaries, not just speaking them, but living by them, my peace grew, my mind got quieter, my spirit got lighter. I could hear God more clearly because I had shut down the noise that used to come from saying yes out of guilt. It takes strength to draw a line. It takes courage to say, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. And I know it's hard, especially when you're used to being the one who always comes through. When you've built your identity on being the strong one, the reliable one, the fixer. But here's what I've learned. You don't owe anyone access to your mental, emotional, or spiritual space just because you once let them in. Growth changes capacity, healing changes perspective, maturity shifts your standards, and that's not cruelty, that's evolution. You are not obligated to be available just because someone is used to having you whenever they want. Just because they've always called you with their problems doesn't mean you're always required to pick up. Just because they expect you to carry their weight doesn't mean it's your assignment. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say, I can't be your cushion anymore. I can't be your emotional crutch. I have to let you stand on your own, and I need space to stand on mine. And let me be clear, boundaries don't mean you stop loving people. Boundaries don't mean you stop caring. Boundaries mean you love yourself enough to say, I matter too. It means you understand that showing up for yourself is not selfish. It's responsible, because when you are whole, when you are rested, when you are clear-headed and aligned, you can love others better. You can give from overflow, not from depletion. Don't let guilt manipulate you into sacrificing your peace for people who only show up when they need something. Don't let history keep you connected to what your heart has already outgrown. Sometimes we confuse longevity with loyalty. But just because they've been around a long time doesn't mean they deserve front row seats in this new season. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a chapter, and keeping them in the next one will cost you clarity. You have to be bold enough to protect your peace without needing everyone to understand why. Some people won't get it. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you distant, cold, selfish. Let them talk. You are not responsible for explaining your healing to people committed to misunderstanding it. You're not here to convince people that your boundaries are valid. You're here to grow. You're here to heal. You're here to be whole. And boundaries are a part of that. They don't make you hard. They keep you soft. They don't make you distant. They preserve your presence for what truly matters. Your presence for what truly matters. They don't push people away. They filter the ones who were never meant to stay that close. And once you start living with boundaries, you start to see who's really for you and who's only for what you can give them. Peace is expensive. Don't hand it out like it's free. Don't give people the keys to your soul just because they ask nicely. Pray about it, test the fruit, watch the patterns, and when you know someone isn't safe for your spirit, don't second guess that discernment. Act on it, set the boundary, keep the boundary, and trust that the people who are aligned with your purpose will respect it. Not only that, they'll thank you for it, because boundaries don't just protect you, they protect the connection. They allow it to grow in truth, in health, in mutual respect. So don't feel bad for guarding your peace. Feel empowered, because every time you set a boundary, you're telling your soul, I see you, I value you, and I won't let anything steal you away again. One of the most powerful shifts you can ever make in life is realizing that you don't have to react to everything. You don't have to respond to every insult, every misunderstanding, every slight, every moment someone doesn't see you or treat you the way you deserve. It's a liberating thing when you finally understand that silence is not weakness, that walking away is not weakness, that your peace is not worth sacrificing for temporary validation. Because what people don't often tell you is this: it takes far more strength to hold your peace than it does to prove your point. There was a time when I believed that if I didn't speak up, I'd be disrespected. That if I didn't correct them, they'd think they won. That if I didn't clear the air or explain myself, the wrong version of the story would stick. But what I didn't see was how all of that explaining, all of that reacting, all of that defending, it was exhausting me. It was keeping me tethered to people and situations that didn't even deserve that level of access to my mind or my heart. I had to learn that just because something demands your attention doesn't mean it deserves your energy. You begin to grow when you realize that not every battle is yours to fight, that not every comment needs a clap back, that not every misunderstanding needs clarification. Sometimes peace looks like letting people have their opinions while you keep your truth. Sometimes peace looks like choosing silence, not because you're afraid, but because you know your value isn't on trial. And the more you grow in that space, the more you start to understand that silence isn't empty, it's powerful. It speaks a language that noise never could. See, when you know who you are, you don't waste time proving it to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't lose sleep over conversations that don't carry weight. You stop replaying scenarios in your mind trying to figure out what you could have said differently to be heard, to be seen, to be justified, because now your sense of worth is no longer external. It's no longer rooted in their reaction. It's rooted in your peace. And here's what I know. People who are still battling their own insecurities, their own unhealed wounds, their own need for control, those people will try to pull you into chaos just to feel powerful. They'll poke at your peace to see if it's real. They'll test your silence, mistaking it for submission. But your growth will frustrate those who can't manipulate you anymore. Your calmness will confuse the people who once fed off your reaction, and your peace will become the evidence of your maturity. There's a freedom that comes when you stop letting other people's dysfunction dictate your emotional climate. You stop being a thermometer and start being a thermostat. You walk into rooms and bring the calm. You encounter tension and respond with wisdom. You face disrespect and maintain your dignity, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you know you don't have to lower yourself to match their behavior. You rise, you pause, you choose differently, and that choice is everything. It's in those moments, the ones where your flesh wants to react, when your pride wants to speak, when your ego wants to step up, that you discover just how far you've come. Because before, you would have clapped back, you would have let them have it, you would have matched their energy and left the situation just as depleted as they did. But now you pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, what's the cost? And more often than not, the cost of that reaction is too expensive, because your peace, it's not worth trading for a moment of being right. It's not worth sacrificing so someone else can feel small. It's not worth the hours you'll spend after the argument sitting in regret, wishing you just walked away. And I know it's hard, especially when the attack feels personal, when they go low and you know you could go lower. When they misrepresent you, twist your words, question your character, but baby, let them talk, let them think, let them stew in the storm they created. Your peace doesn't need their permission to exist. Your peace isn't fragile, it's rooted. And when your peace is rooted, it starts to act like armor. You wake up different. You stop living in a constant state of defense. You stop rehearsing imaginary arguments. You stop needing everyone to like you. And most importantly, you stop apologizing for being unavailable to drama, because your silence becomes your sanctuary. Your non-reaction becomes your power, and that's where real transformation lives, not in the noise, but in the restraint. You learn that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to respond to every accusation. You don't have to justify your boundaries, your healing, your peace. Some people aren't ready for the healed version of you. Some people liked the you who was quick to anger, easy to bait, constantly on edge, because that version gave them access. That version gave them control. But now you've grown. Now you choose quiet. Now you protect your peace like the sacred thing it is. And it's not about being passive. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about being wise enough to choose your battles. Discernment will show you what to fight for and what to walk away from. And more often than not, silence will teach you more than shouting ever could. It gives you space to hear God. It gives you clarity that chaos could never deliver. And it shows you that you don't have to prove your growth. You can just live it. When you start living this way, people will notice. They may not say anything, but they'll feel it. Your energy will shift the room. Your calmness will convict them. Your peace will preach without a single word. Because people know what it feels like to be around someone who's grounded, someone who's not easily shaken, someone who doesn't flinch every time something goes wrong. That kind of presence, that's cultivated, that's fought for, that's protected. And the beauty of all this is that every time you choose not to react, you reclaim a little more of your power. Every time you walk away from chaos, you walk deeper into your healing. Every time you respond with silence instead of rage, you reinforce the truth that you are no longer the same. You're no longer available to what used to distract you, break you, trigger you. You're growing, you're glowing, and your peace is the proof. You said expand Keynote Note 5 with 1,000 words, but not add any heading and closing sentence, ChatGPT said. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you carry it. That right there is a revelation that will shift your entire life. Because the truth is, there will always be someone who doubts you, overlooks you, misunderstands your heart, or misjudges your intentions. You will encounter people who talk about you like they never knew you, who walk away like you never mattered, who criticize from a distance what they could never handle up close. But none of that has to break you if you learn how to master your inner world. It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about refusing to let that hurt become your identity. What happens in you will always be more powerful than what happens to you. That's why healing matters. That's why you have to process the pain, not suppress it. Because if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. Unprocessed hurt becomes the lens through which you see everything. Every new relationship, every opportunity, every challenge. And when you're not healed, everything starts to feel like an attack. Every no feels like rejection. Every disagreement feels like betrayal. Every delay feels like punishment. But when you're healed, you start to see things differently. You start to move differently. You stop reacting from a place of woundedness and start responding from a place of wisdom. Healing isn't just about getting over the past. It's about reclaiming your power in the present. It's about realizing that just because you were hurt doesn't mean you have to live hurt. Just because they disappointed you doesn't mean you have to carry disappointment into every room. Just because someone failed you doesn't mean your future is doomed. Healing gives you the power to feel fully without being ruled by your feelings. It gives you the clarity to say, yes, that broke my heart, but it won't break my character. There's something unshakable about someone who has done the work to heal. They walk into rooms with quiet confidence. They don't need to announce who they are because their energy already says it. They don't need to clap back or defend themselves because their peace is louder than any rumor. They don't crumble under pressure because they've already been to hell and back and they know what survival tastes like. Healing makes you bold, not bitter. It makes you discerning, not defensive, and that's how you start living free. Free from the need to be understood by everyone. Free from the need to prove your worth. Free from the need to constantly apologize for who you've become. Because when you've healed, you understand that not everyone is meant to clap for you. Some people were only assigned to your brokenness. They were comfortable with the version of you that needed them, that stayed small, that kept quiet. But the healed you, the whole you, that version might make them uncomfortable. And that's okay. You're not here to stay in places that celebrate your wounds but fear your strength. And let's talk about forgiveness, because healing and forgiveness walk hand in hand. You cannot truly heal and still hold on to the offense like it's your security blanket. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying what they did was okay. It means you're choosing not to let it keep you bound. It means you're giving yourself the gift of release. You're saying, I will not be tethered to what they did. I will not let this poison my purpose. Forgiveness is less about them and more about you. It's about freeing your heart so it can breathe again, so it can trust again, so it can dream again. I know it's hard. I know the wound runs deep. But what if your healing is waiting on the other side of your release? What if the breakthrough you've been praying for is tied to the bitterness you've been carrying? What if the strength you need is being blocked by the grudge you won't let go of? Sometimes you have to make the hard choice to let go of the right to be angry, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. And when you truly start healing, you start attracting different experiences. You stop choosing from your pain and start choosing from your power. You stop allowing people to trigger you because those triggers have been tended to. You stop entertaining cycles that once felt like home because now wholeness is your new home. You don't have to prove that you're healed. Your life will speak for itself. Your boundaries will speak for themselves. Your peace, your patience, your ability to walk away without needing revenge, that speaks volumes. Healing also means learning how to be gentle with yourself, because some of us have been so hard on ourselves for so long, we don't even know what compassion looks like when it's directed inward. But you deserve grace too. You deserve room to grow, to make mistakes, to not get it right the first time. The journey to healing is not linear. There are days you feel like you've overcome it all, and days it still stings. That doesn't mean you failed, it means you're human. Healing isn't a destination, it's a commitment. A daily decision to choose peace over pain, love over fear, and progress over perfection. And don't be surprised if healing costs you some company. There are people who liked you better broken because your brokenness made them feel needed, made them feel powerful, made them feel safe, but you're not responsible for staying hurt just to keep people comfortable. Growth will isolate you before it elevates you, but that isolation, it's not punishment, it's preparation. It's in the quiet spaces, the lonely moments, the misunderstood seasons where God does his deepest work, where he teaches you to hear his voice louder than theirs, where he shows you how to carry your peace without needing approval, where he heals what you thought was beyond repair. And once you've tasted that healing, once you've experienced what it's like to live without constant anger, without being bothered by every little thing, there's no going back. You become addicted to your peace. You stop fighting for spaces that don't align with your healing. You stop begging for validation from people who were never equipped to love you right. You learn how to sit with yourself and not feel lacking, how to be alone without being lonely, how to enjoy your own company because you become someone you actually like. This is the power of healing. Not that it erases the past, but that it reclaims your future. Not that it makes you forget the pain, but that it reminds you the pain didn't win. Healing is the secret weapon. It's the quiet strength that allows you to live unbothered, unshaken, and unapologetically whole. And when you get to that place, you'll understand that no one, not a single soul, can take away what's already been restored inside of you. There's a strength that comes when you stop needing life to be fair, when you stop waiting for apologies you may never receive, stop expecting closure from people who left you confused, stop hoping for people to change so you can finally feel peace. Real peace is not found in other people's ability to act right. It's found in your decision to stop letting their wrongness rob you of your right mind. That kind of peace isn't handed to you. It's something you choose in the face of disappointment. You wake up and say, even if they never say sorry, I will still be whole. Even if I never understand why they did what they did, I will still be free. See, the thing about emotional freedom is that it's not about what's happening around you, it's about what's happening in you. You can't control what they do, but you can control what you entertain. You can't force them to grow, but you can choose not to shrink. You can't rewrite the past, but you can stop replaying it like a broken record, tormenting your mind with memories that won't change. That's where emotional intelligence comes in. It's not about being numb. It's not about being cold. It's about being wise enough to not be held hostage by your emotions. You feel them, you acknowledge them, but you don't live in them. Because the truth is, emotions are visitors. They're not supposed to become residents. That anger you felt, it came to teach you something, not to take over your house. That offense, it came to highlight a boundary that needs to be strengthened, not to build a wall around your heart. But if you let every feeling lead, you'll find yourself in emotional chaos. One day up, the next day down. One moment loving yourself, the next questioning your worth. 1 second believing in your future, the next drowning in doubt. You can't build consistency on emotional instability. At some point, you have to decide, my peace will not be dictated by how I feel today. I had to learn that I'm allowed to feel the emotion without following the emotion, that I can feel angry and still choose peace, that I can feel disappointed and still move forward, that I can feel hurt and still act from love, because maturity is knowing that every reaction is a seed, and I'm not going to plant bitterness and expect a harvest of peace. Just because something feels right in the moment doesn't mean it's right for your future. You've got to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this worth my character? Is this emotion trying to lead me, or is it trying to teach me? And the more you practice emotional control, the more you start to see how powerful you actually are. Not because you're detached, not because you don't feel, but because you've mastered the art of choosing your response instead of being dragged by your reaction. That's power. That's leadership. That's wisdom. You stop reacting to every shade thrown your way because you're too busy standing in the light. You stop trying to match energy because your energy is sacred. You stop letting people's chaos become your chaos because you've trained your spirit to stay grounded when everything else is shaking. People will try to provoke you just to feel powerful. They'll say something just to get a reaction. But your silence, your calm, your decision to keep your joy, that's what they don't expect. That's what throws them off. Because when you're healed, when you're emotionally rooted, you don't play by the same rules anymore. You don't argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't waste breath trying to convince someone who has already made up their mind. You let them think what they want while you live what you know. And yes, there will be days when your emotions rise up like a storm. Days when you want to scream, when you want to cuss them out, when you want to say exactly what's on your mind. And you absolutely could. But then what? You win the argument and lose your peace? You feel good for a minute, but carry the weight of that outburst for days? Sometimes the real flex is not letting them get a rise out of you, not because you're weak, but because you've finally realized that not every fight is worth your spirit. You are not here to manage everyone's emotions. You're not here to fix everyone's mess. You're not here to carry what isn't yours. And when you start recognizing that, you start detaching from outcomes. You start letting go of the need to be right. You start releasing the pressure to respond perfectly. Because now your peace isn't situational, it's spiritual. It's not based on what they say, it's based on what God says. It's not rooted in validation, it's rooted in truth. And when your truth is unshaken, your emotions stop running your life. Let's be real. Emotional control is not something you master in a day. It's a process. It's choosing again and again to take a breath before you respond. It's pausing before you post. It's learning to recognize when you're triggered and asking what's really going on beneath this, because 90% of the time, the emotion you're reacting to isn't even about the present moment. It's connected to a wound, a memory, a belief you haven't healed. But when you become aware, you start gaining authority. You can say, oh, this isn't them. This is my old fear trying to speak. This is my insecurity trying to show up. This is my past pain knocking on the door of my peace, but I don't have to let it in. And let me tell you something else. Your emotions are not bad. They're not your enemy. God gave them to you for a reason, but they were meant to signal, not to steer. They were meant to show you where healing is needed, not to drive your When you start treating your emotions like indicators, not dictators, your whole life shifts. You start moving with clarity. You start speaking with intention. You start leading with wisdom, because now you're no longer a slave to your moods. You become the master of your responses. So when someone comes at you sideways, you won't lose your cool. When the enemy tries to bait you into drama, you won't bite. When your feelings start rising, you'll be able to step back and say, I see what this is, I feel it, but it doesn't control me. And in that moment, you'll realize this is emotional freedom. Not the absence of feelings, but the ability to feel without being ruled, to cry without falling apart, to hurt without lashing out, to love without losing yourself. That's the goal. That's the strength. That's the secret. So now you know it's not about never feeling. It's about never letting those feelings own you. It's not about never being tested. It's about being too anchored to fall apart. The secret to never getting angry or bothered by anyone isn't in changing them. It's in transforming you. It's in reclaiming your peace, guarding your heart, mastering your mind, healing your soul, and walking in a power so rooted that no chaos can shake it. Because once you've tasted the calm that comes from wholeness, you'll never be hungry for drama again. And the best part, you don't have to force anyone to understand it. Just live it. Let your peace do the talking. Let your stillness be your strength. Let your growth be your answer. And let the version of you who no longer reacts be the loudest proof that you've truly been set free.